Ladies and gentlemen,
They say the next big thing is here.
the Steve Warneke Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Steve Warneke Show. Retired police sergeant, speaker, consultant, and a bunch of other things. But I am your resident police expert at stevewarneke.com, also author of award-winning From Boy to Blue, the memoir about my time on the police department. Get your copy at Amazon today. This week's podcast discusses police tactics after a high-profile incident in Miami Beach in which a college student was shot by police while she was behind the wheel of a car. And shooting at moving vehicles has been a bone of contention for police departments for years now. So I want to recap the facts just a little bit for you. We don't yet have all of them. We don't know toxicology reports. I would imagine that there's some substances on board during this incident. But here's what we do have. We have a young female college student who crashed into several cars on Miami Beach. The woman ran red lights. She crashed into a Mercedes. It was estimated she was traveling at 60 miles an hour on crowded Miami Beach. As the police go to contact her, her vehicle comes to a stop. The front end is smashed in. She's crashed into several cars. The police are walking up to contact her. She drives off, runs over a police officer. A second police officer on scene opens fire, killing the woman. Her car crashes a short time later into other parked cars. And I'd like to play a clip from Local 10 News in Miami to show you a little bit about what happened in the incident. Here is Andrew Perez with Local 10 in Miami.
Police are saying that this young woman, she was driving erratically all over South Beach, that she was crashing into cars. Well, when police approached, she just took off, striking an officer.
Y'all get out the way so in case she drive off.
This video posted to social media. Onlookers telling police the driver of this black BMW appears to be drunk. Officers walk toward the car after the driver just hit several vehicles and kept trying to drive away. As police move in, things quickly escalate. If you take a closer look at that video, you can see the driver hits a Miami Beach officer, sending him airborne. Another officer then opens fire. Crews rush to the officer down on the ground. The 22-year-old woman behind the wheel was shot and crashed just down the street. Police tried to revive her, but she wouldn't make it.
Okay, so that's a little bit of the media coverage with actual footage, which, by the way, this is an entirely different podcast that I've been planning. Why hundreds of people stand around with their cell phones recording? It boggles my mind why nobody jumps into action, but they're all just standing around like this is a reality TV show and that nobody's in danger. There's no citizen's arrest. Nobody tries to detain her. Nobody gets her out of the car, takes the key. Nobody. Everybody's just standing around. Oh, like it's crazy to me. It's crazy. What are you doing? Now I'm going to go to a Miami Herald article regarding this incident. And, you know, they talk about the controversy involved in police using their firearms in a moving vehicle. And I've talked about this several times when it comes to police incidents. Who is it we are hearing from in this article? Well, we hear from the police union. Funny that we don't hear from the police chief, but we're hearing from the police union, which I think carries less weight with people. They're going, it's the union. I don't know. We're not hearing from the leadership of the organization. Why not? This lady, an adult female, made a decision to crash into cars, endangering everybody, and then with a crowd of people surrounding her, drive off, running over a police officer. She made that decision. But who are we hearing from in this Miami Herald article? Who do we hear from in the aftermath of these incidents? Well, we're hearing from the woman's father. Now listen, the man's just lost his daughter. That's very difficult. I understand he's upset. I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to say we don't want, you don't have the right to those feelings or shut up or anything like that. But what I want to say is you're hearing one side, and here's what the father is saying, and here's what makes it into the article. Nothing from the police executives. We're hearing from the father of the woman who was killed. And the father's quote that was quoted in the Miami Herald was, quote, "She was going to be the attorney to save the world. Everybody that knew her knew she had a great future." I'm not debating that this female who was shot by police wasn't talented, wasn't smart, wasn't a good person. But at the end of the day, her decision to endanger 10, 20, 30 lives, to run over police, to get behind the wheel of a car, and we'll await the toxicology results, but probably not going to be a big surprise if there's something in her system. That's a decision she made. We hear more from the article, again from the father. She liked to, this is a quote, "She liked to drive fast, but what young person doesn't like to drive fast?" Okay, I understand he's upset, but let me say, she was not shot for speeding. That is the insinuation by the Miami Herald, that this woman was simply shot for speeding. That is a completely terrible bias. It's frankly just unbelievable that that's the recap from the Miami Herald, because that's the insinuation. You read that, the taste it leaves in your mouth is that she was shot for speeding. It's not even like they don't come out and say it. You have to read between the lines, but it leaves you thinking like, God, she was just a young person driving fast, killed by the cops. Stop it. That's not even close. That's not even close to what happened. After 15 years in law enforcement, I understand that shooting into a moving vehicle is a controversial subject. I personally think that there are times where you have to shoot into a moving vehicle, where it's justified and acceptable. But if you disagree with this, what would your remedy be? What is your remedy for this situation? Like, well, you should never shoot into a moving vehicle. So, she's only crashed into people. She hasn't killed anybody yet, I would argue. So, let's just let her go. We'll catch up with her later. We'll arrest her later. What happens when later she runs over 4, 5, 6 pedestrians, or later her actions kill somebody? Then everybody's going, well, the police should have stopped her when they had a chance. It's classic damned if you do, damned if you don't, which is where the police always find themselves. And it takes leadership on the part of police departments to come out and say, listen, we had no choice. We don't want to shoot anybody. We don't want to use this kind of force. But an adult made a decision that endangered the lives of the community members, and officers had a split second to decide how to stop her. And guess what? It did stop her. She crashed a few feet later. What would your remedy be? Because you only have 2 options, right? You either stop her, attempt to stop her by shooting into the vehicle, or you let her go. I have a feeling, and this is the trend that's been happening, is more and more people in the community say, let her go. We'll catch up to him later. Police executives and policies say, don't chase anybody. Don't shoot into moving vehicles. Let them go. We'll catch up with them later. There's got to be a point in society that the buck stops here. You're no longer allowed to continue with what you're doing. You're endangering the lives of the citizenry. You can't keep going. Should you just be able to run over a policeman as he comes to get you out of the car after crashing? Oh, where does it, and we're just going to go, that's what they're paid to do. Why can't we as a society just agree? Listen, if you start running people over, including police officers that are trying to confront you about your actions, you're going to face gunfire. You might likely be killed. Can we just agree that that's the rule? And then when it happens, we don't have to argue about it. We can go, well, we all agreed. We all agreed. That was the rule. And you ran the officer over. So that was the rule. Sorry. Don't do that. For other people, don't do that, because guess what's going to happen? You're going to face gunfire and potentially be injured or killed. That's what happens when you run over the police. Can we just agree that's a consequence of running over police officers? That's what's going to happen to you? I think that's okay to agree on that. I think unless you're anti-government, anti-police, anti-authority, anti-establishment, you would tend to agree with that fact. Eventually, at some point, the buck's got to stop. When I was at the Denver Police Department, there was a manager of safety that was appointed by the mayor at some point, and he tried to draft a policy just saying you can't shoot at cars ever. But, you know, the policy never really, it was like, well, unless you can't draft policies like that. Law enforcement is of such a nature that nothing is absolute. I talk about this in my book. You can't say, well, I mean, they talk about baton strikes. They say you got to strike people in an approved area. You can't hit them in the joints, you can't hit them in the head, you can't hit them in the organs, you can't hit them in the groin, unless they're about to stab somebody and kill them. Then if you have to hit them in the head, like all you had was your baton, you have to hit them in the head, then okay. You can't make absolute rules in law enforcement. There's always an exception, and it's up to law enforcement to articulate why they did what they did. That's why I've been saying week in and week out that we have to look at every case individually in a totality of the circumstances, that we can't just make broad brush rules and policies that apply. This is difficult to write a policy like this. Miami Beach, up until 5 months ago, had this policy that said it was absolutely not okay to shoot into a moving vehicle until after the terrorist attacks in Europe. 5 months ago, they updated their policy to say that shooting at a moving vehicle is allowed when the vehicle threatens to ram into a crowd of people. And I think based on the video we saw that I just played you, that was the case. I went to go look at the Denver Police Department policy, since that's where I worked, and the one online at least says that the use of force policy is under review. And it talks about shooting into moving vehicles. And let me just show you, this is what police policies typically sound like. I just want to read you a bit from the Denver Police Department Operations Manual, which is available online for anybody to read, about the use of force into moving vehicles. Firearms shall not be discharged at a moving or fleeing vehicle unless deadly force is being used against the police officer or another person present by means other than moving the vehicle. Okay, so just moving the vehicle doesn't count. That's subsection A. Here's subsection B. Officers shall exercise good judgment and not move into or remain in the path of a moving vehicle. Moving into or remaining in the path of a moving vehicle, whether deliberate or inadvertent, shall not be justification for discharging a firearm. Any officer in the path of a vehicle shall attempt to move to a position of safety rather than discharging a firearm. This guy clearly did not have that option. Firing at moving vehicles is prohibited for the following reasons. Firing at a moving vehicle may have very little impact on stopping the vehicle. That manager of safety I was referring to said, how are you going to stop a 2,000-pound car with a 200-grain bullet or whatever? Well, it worked, didn't it? Didn't it? They used a gun to stop a vehicle in this Miami incident. As you can see, it stopped the vehicle. She did not go to continue on. She stopped. I think his insinuation is that the bullet doesn't stop the car. Yeah, you don't shoot at a car and the car just stops where it's at. Right, obviously. Clearly. Disabling the driver may result in an uncontrolled vehicle and the likelihood of injury to occupants of the vehicle. I'm not reading you the whole paragraph. We'd be here all day. There's more. Subsection D. It's understood that the policy in regards to discharging a firearm at a moving vehicle, like all written policies, may not cover every situation. Any deviations shall be examined rigorously on a case-by-case basis. Officers are discouraged from immediately approaching a stopped vehicle at the conclusion of a pursuit or other high-risk stop. Firing from a moving vehicle. Accuracy may be severely impacted from firing when a moving vehicle... Okay. Right? And the last paragraph, and this is the most important one. Above all, the safety of the public and officer must be the overriding concern when the use of force is considered. Did you hear anything in that policy? You read that policy and you go, how am I supposed to take 52 points into consideration in 5 seconds where we're coming... these officers are just walking up. It's just a car crash. The woman's sitting behind the wheel. There's a crowd of people. You're walking up. You're going to get her out. You're going to do the accident report. If she's drunk, you're going to run her DUI. There's no reason to think that this wasn't a pursuit. There's no reason to think she's going to run you over. You walk up to the vehicle. She runs you over. This other guy's got 5 seconds to decide. 2 seconds. He's got 2 seconds to decide, is she a big enough threat that she's going to go on and injure the community? Do I have to stop her right now? You try to take that policy that I just read you, and I didn't even read all of it, into consideration in 2 seconds. Try it. But the policy makes sense. Because what the policy is, and I think this is a decent policy, is, look, we got to examine it on a case-by-case basis. The safety of the public and the officer is paramount. And here are some things you should consider. Your accuracy may be reduced. The vehicle may be out of control, may injure other people. You may have very little impact on stopping a vehicle. It's tough to hit a driver of a moving vehicle and stop. I mean, that is a tough shot. Okay, it's a lot of things to consider. But that's what police policies understand. But we don't hear, and the police department doesn't have to come out necessarily and say, we've done our investigation by the next day and the officer didn't do anything. The police department executives can come out and say, this is the policy. This is the entire policy. The Miami Herald, God forbid, print a policy of the Miami Police Department, of the Miami Beach Police Department, and put that in the paper and say, well, this officer had 2 seconds to decide whether or not this fit the policy. He had 2 seconds to determine whether or not she was going to kill other people and go on to be such a threat to the community that he had to stop her right there. And all he had to go on, he doesn't know who she is. He doesn't know her background. He doesn't know her history. He doesn't know. All he knows is this person behind the wheel has crashed into several cars and is endangering the lives of everybody around and just ran over my partner and used her vehicle as deadly force. Come on, Miami Herald. How about a little more fairness in your reporting? Come on, Miami Beach Police Department. Why are we not hearing from you? Why are we hearing from the police union? At what point are we accountable for our own actions? At what point in society and the world does the buck stop? This wasn't a harmless speeding citation. This wasn't some joyride of a young college student. This was a serious fucking incident. You have a woman who has crashed, who has run over police, who's presenting an active threat to the community that's nearby and potentially, as she speeds away into the night, to crash into God knows how many other people and cars before she finally does hurt or kill somebody. Where does the buck stop? Where do you want the buck to stop if you're outraged about police shooting? You know, ladies and gentlemen, we could be talking about the fact that 10, 20, 30 or more people are dead after a college woman in Miami Beach runs them over and kills them all. And we're not talking about that. And do you know why we're not talking about that? Because the police officers in Miami Beach stopped her. That's why we're not talking about the other side of this potential coin. And is it a tragedy? Of course it's a tragedy. Would I prefer that nobody ever gets killed by the police? Of course I would, you guys, of course. But that's not the world in which we live. There's consequences for our actions. There has to be. Or we're going to descend into anarchy and chaos. So I didn't hear any support of the police in Miami Beach for their actions this last week. But I will support you. I'm sorry that you're going to have to live with the fact that you had to take somebody's life. That's undoubtedly going to be difficult for you. I'm sorry that you're going to have to go to bed at night knowing that you had to make that decision. I'm sorry you had limited facts because you were walking up doing your job, protecting the community, and you had a couple seconds to decide what to do. Well, I think you made the right decision. Yes, it's a tragedy. Yes, I'm sorry for the family. Yes, I'm sorry for the loss of this young college student. But you made the right decision. All right, everybody, thanks for your time. Thanks for being with us. We've got lots of stuff. Another book giveaway coming up. Stay tuned on Facebook and over at stevewarneke.com. We've got weekly articles, podcasts, and lots of content at stevewarneke.com and at Facebook. Thanks very much for being with us. I look forward to seeing you next time.